I think at this point we're gonna start moving it over from the networking part of it to the webinar. So as in a real event, I'd encourage you grab a cup of coffee and settle down. And what we're going to do as unlike a real event, we're going to move people from the networking part. So you're going to see faces disappearing from the screen, because what we're trying to do is create a webinar where we're highlighting our panel. We don't want to do that too quickly because I don't know if all of our panelists are here as well too. But I guess before we do that, we do have a few more minutes if anyone wants to give us a couple of updates in the next few minutes while we're moving over to the webinar part of it as well too. Or I'll turn it over at this point. So we'll move everyone over, and I guess before I hand it over to Rick Kaplan, I want to introduce and welcome our panel. Starting with Peter Aber. I know Peter, I saw him on the line as well, from the Executive Director at Mass Econ, who will be our moderator today, as well as Katie Enright. I believe Katie is on as well too. From Howard Stein Hudson, is Senior Civil Engineer, as well as Laurent Silka from the Gutierrez Company, Senior Project Manager at Gutierrez Company, and Rick Jensen. I know I saw Rick. He's from Erling Construction, VP Director of Operations. So I thank our panel. And the other gentleman that you'll be seeing on the screen is Rick Kaplan from the New England Real Estate Journal. And I'm going to turn it over to Rick, who's going to do a little bit of introductions and a thank you to our sponsors as well. So Rick, it's all yours.
Okay. Welcome. I'm glad to see everyone. Looks like everyone's doing well and staying healthy, which is nice. I want to thank everyone for joining us on the first M3 and the New England Real Estate Journal real estate panels. I want to thank our sponsors for today. Without them, we couldn't be doing something like this. We want to Mogul Architects, BSC Group, Rima and Bronstein. Vendor sponsors are US Pavement, Erling Construction, EBI Consulting, and National Grid. I also want to mention that we will be having a spotlight on this event, and this is a 4-part series, so there'll be 3 more panels in the next coming weeks. You should be seeing that the flyer come out. The next one is June 3rd, and that one is real estate development in Q3 and Q4 of 2020. And right now we're going to go to our first panel, and I want to introduce our moderator. It's Peter Aber. He's the Executive Director of Mass Econ. Peter, I hand it over to you.
Great, thank you, Rick, and thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, Middlesex 3 and the New England Real Estate Journal for hosting this. We have a terrific panel, and my job as moderator is get to them as quickly as possible for some introductions. I want to spend just a couple moments on Mass Econ and what we do. So again, my name is Pete Aber. I'm Executive Director at Mass Econ. Mass Econ is a nonprofit organization, statewide nonprofit, and we are part of championing Massachusetts as a place to do business. And we are, while not part of state government, we're not a state agency, we're a statewide nonprofit. We work in close partnership with our partners in state government. So I saw Peter Milano and among the faces there earlier. We have a great relationship with the Mass Office of Business Development. So as an organization, we're very much at the table with the state agencies. So as we champion Massachusetts, what do? We market Massachusetts beyond our borders to out-of-state site selecting consultants, out-of-state real estate directors for different corporations and so forth. We provide site location services to the Commonwealth. So when the state receives an inquiry looking for a specific space requirement, for example, our job is really to fill out an inventory and provide that to our partners in state government so they can respond to that inquiry effectively. And we also develop business intelligence for our member organizations, really for the purpose of helping develop lead generation, so that we can help stir the pot, so to speak, and develop more lead opportunities for Massachusetts. We also do events over the course of the year. We are a membership association, and that's something that obviously we're not doing now, other than through virtual meetings like this, and that really is something that has been a sea change, certainly for us, but it's also allowed us to frankly spend more time on our core mission. And happily, we have seen still a fairly robust pipeline of projects for considering Massachusetts as a destination. So that's the great news for Massachusetts amidst a lot of difficult news. So with that, back in terms of Mass Econ and my role at Mass Econ, let's go to introducing our terrific panel. So we have Katie Enright from Howard Stein and Hudson, Lawrence Sika from the Gutierrez companies, and Rick Jensen from Erlen Construction. And what I'm going to ask each to do is introduce themselves and their role at their organizations. And let's start with Katie Enright.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Katie Enright. I am a professional civil engineer with Howard Stein Hudson. I have been with Howard Stein Hudson we just celebrated our 5th anniversary with opening the Chelmsford office. Here by myself today to get away from my house and all the extra noises. I've also been a 3rd grade teacher as of late, which has been fun trying to mix with the civil engineering. Howard Stein Hudson, we do a lot of great things. I am in the land planning and permitting and civil engineering role, so I am working with private land developers to develop projects throughout Massachusetts and southern New Hampshire. But we offer transportation engineering, transportation planning, complete streets planning, construction oversight, public involvement, and also as of late, we actually do structural engineering too. So a lot of exciting things. We've been home working effectively since March 16th. And it looks like we're going to be extended out to at least July 1 with working from home. Our company was very lucky that we kind of banded together and were able to put together some really great working from home solutions before the stay-at-home order came out. So we've been doing really well working from home and collaborating and bringing work in the door. I'm excited to be on this panel today and look forward to discussing kind of my vision under coronavirus.
Great, let's go to Lawrence.
Good morning, everybody. So my name is Laurent Sika. I'm a senior construction project manager for the Gutierrez Construction Company, which is a division of the Gutierrez Company. So we're a developer with a vertically integrated approach. So we do a lot of development, design work, construction, and then management of the properties. We're based, and we've been based in Burlington for over 30 years at this point, where we operate. And some of the markets where you'll find us, offices, life science, R&D, labs. We also do some industrial and retail work. So just a little bit about what we do.
And on to Richard.
Hi, let's see, am I off mute? Yes, I'm off mute. I'm Rick Jensen. I'm Vice President of Operations for Erlen Construction. We are also based in Burlington, Massachusetts. We're about a $200 million a year organization. We were formed in 1977, primarily as a design build firm for the development aspirations of Roger Nordbaum and George Maycumber. We have since diversified into 4 separate groups or markets. We have a residential group, which does multifamily housing and senior living. We have ACC group, which is academic, commercial, and technology, mainly private schools, not public schools. We have a special projects group where we take on special projects, and it's also special accounts as well. It's not just special or small projects, there's special projects. And then we have a market in the advanced tech life science, which is a growing market right at this time. So our two biggest markets right now are the residential and the advanced tech life science. During the pandemic, we did have 5 special projects, and I guess the pandemic is still ongoing. Essential projects, they were housing projects. So we've kept everybody employed. We've been lucky in that regard. As far as the office goes, we're all working from home, and we've just recently opened our office and put some protocols together, which we might get into later on. I'll let you all know how that all went. And I think that wraps up my brief introduction.
Great. Well, thank you all. And for those that are participating as our audience, our attendees for this event, just to highlight how this program will go, we're going to spend about a half an hour in discussion with the panel, but we all want you to be able to participate also with your questions. So at about the 10:30, 35 mark, I will turn to Erin from Middlesex 3, and she will work with the attendees who do have questions, who raise their hand and submit via the chat their interest in asking questions, and Erin will make that all work miraculously. That's where we'll be at about 10:35 as noted. And the discussion in terms of our questions in advance of that really is sort of focused on 3 areas. What has happened during what we'll call the shutdown pandemic period, really this period that we're sort of just starting to emerge from, dating from March to this time. And then, again, focusing on real estate construction, what is changing in this pandemic period during the phase in of different stages of reopening for different companies, and how is that activity changing for these organizations? And finally, what is anticipated in the new normal, what we'll call living with the pandemic or post-pandemic period in terms of construction trends that we foresee, and how's that going to impact the work being done. So with that, we'll start with the first question, and we'll stick in the same order for now. Katie to Lauren to Rick. Really look where the period again that we're just emerging from, starting in back in March, what we'll maybe call the shutdown period. How has your organization been able to focus on your clients, on those that you serve, the projects that are already underway? To what degree have those projects really stopped, or to what degree have they been able to continue during that period? What are the practical considerations that you've had to consider in delivering for your clients, for your tenants in that period of time? So we'll start with Katie.
Sure. So as I stated in my intro, we had practiced with our CAD director and our IT company the week prior to the shutdown. So we had actually all kind of been implemented from home to make sure that we could all be up and running from home if the stay-at-home order was called. So we were lucky in that way that we really planned for that. We were all able to hit the ground running that Monday where we were asked to stay home. And we were able to take our work equipment and set up remotely from home. So that worked out very well. We have been, as an organization, we have been having meetings every Monday morning to talk about workload like for the week. Something that we've continued from being in the office. We were already using GoToMeeting. We have 3 offices, one in Boston, one in Worcester, and one in Chelmsford. So we were already doing this and utilizing virtual meetings. So that was pretty seamless. We've also been having happy hours with staff on Friday night to keep everybody engaged. We've also been having virtual staff meetings and leadership meetings every couple of weeks to keep people engaged, keep people up to date as to what's happening within the company, keeping people's confidence and spirits up as we move through the pandemic. So far, workload has seemed, at first, I think people were pretty shocked and kind of took a step back. I feel like people are finally starting to feel that certainly this isn't going away and are making adaptations to their everyday work life to keep projects moving forward. As Richard stated, we also have a lot of multifamily projects in private development. So there are quite a few construction projects that have been able to move forward, and we've been educated about the protocols to be on site and to stay protected while we're on site with masks, with gloves, with sanitizer, et cetera, and to make sure that we practice social distancing while still kind of keeping the economic development projects that are so needed moving forward. Town to town, permitting wise, it's been pretty complex. Every town and city, as far as permitting, has taken a different approach. Some have been very quick and were quick to adapt within the first 2 weeks of the pandemic. Others are just starting to kind of break out with Zoom public meetings and allow us to move forward, while there are still a few out there that are waiting until the 45 days after the state of emergency has been removed to accept new projects and new permits. So it's very much been a learning experience to call the towns or cities, ask what they're doing, how they're doing it, how the submission requirements have changed, and keep projects that were in development or starting development moving forward.
Great. Same question to Lauren. Who appears to be muted. Yeah, we'll work on that. This is bound to happen.
Here we are.
There you go.
Here we are.
All right. I already answered.
The mic was off. The table in front of you.
So in terms of office staff, very similar. We moved to remote fairly quickly. Fortunately, our systems were pretty well established to allow for that, our tools and equipment. So we're able to operate as a team remotely. We ramped up a lot of what was in person turned to virtual. So a lot of meetings, our weekly team meetings, project specific reviews, and so on. Specific to active construction. So we have or had at the time projects that were in full swing, projects that were ramping up, and projects later at a later stage of construction. So the big task there was just pivoting based on what the new requirements were, which started off with implementing measures to ensure health and safety for all the workers, hand wash stations, PPE, and then went to a state mandated shutdown. And so from there, really all non-essential work had to stop. We were able to stay the course and organize and maintain a lot of the critical and emergency tasks that needed to take place to protect the buildings, to make sure that that service was maintained or established, to protect materials and finishes. A lot of communication with the authorities, so just making sure that we're on the same page with what the expectations are, public health, letting them know who's on site, what's happening. Similar with our stakeholders, the owners, the tenants, just making sure that they understand what we're doing, how are we securing the site. In some cases, what are we doing as a temporary measure to make sure that we're protecting the building? And then now where we are today with kind of the restart, we had our COVID-19 plan in place prior to shutdown, and it was really just some fine tweaks really to increase PPE measures and distancing, and really kind of looking at how we allocate manpower in greater detail onto the site, and making sure that we're really controlling the distancing. So that's a lot of what the effort has been. We're 2 weeks into quote unquote restart, and the good news is we're getting buy-in from everybody, because I think people understand that it's for everybody's benefit.
Yeah, and on to Rick. Rick, in your introductory remarks, you mentioned some of the things Erlen Construction was doing in this shutdown period that we're emerging from. Could you tell the most of Erlen is focused mostly in the commercial space, or is there also some housing involved in?
We have four separate groups. We do have a residential multifamily housing group, which is flourishing right now. The market is strong for housing in Massachusetts. We had 5 projects that were ongoing that the governor initially considered essential when he shut things down and issued the stay-at-home order. So the good part and the hard part about that was we had to develop all of our programs on the fly. We had to protect our workers, not only our own workers, but our subcontractor community, based on what the governor's orders were, and we had to develop these programs ahead of time. So that really took most of March and April to really get it down. It was an ever-changing process with things that were coming out from the governor and other CDC and other avenues. But the good part of getting all those protocols down is now that there's the restart, we have it all ready to go. So every job needs to have a COVID plan that has to be submitted. We have those plans ready to go. We have sample plans on our portal where everybody has access to. So every project management team writes a COVID plan for their job and submits it to the town and the Board of Health. So in that regard, being part of the essential process in March and April has really helped us to plan and hit the ground running as we go forward into the restart. And we had developed.
Oh, go ahead. So we're in the restart period, and different phases ahead of us. And I guess question, and maybe we'll go in reverse order this time. So right back at you, Rick. So we're in the restart period. You have a COVID plan as an organization. Are you at this point? What are you hearing from your customers, your clients, on these ongoing projects? Are the nature of those projects changing as a result of the pandemic in terms of what the requests for projects that were already underway, and what are you seeing perhaps at initial stages for new projects coming in term, really, we can cover a lot of ground with this question in terms of are there any changes in space requirements? We know there are going to be some immediate changes in terms of how COVID is affecting the workplace, and accommodations need to be made. But what are we seeing down the road, perhaps a little bit farther into this working during the pandemic period, in terms of changes in substantial changes or moderations of ongoing projects that were already underway pre-pandemic? Are those changing at all in the pandemic period? And for these initial projects that are coming online, is the pandemic very much on the mind of these customers as they engage you with these new projects?
Yeah, I think it's really on everybody's mind. So on new projects, there's new contract terms that have to deal with the pandemic. There's productivity issues that come up. It takes more time and more cost to put all these protocols into place. They're government mandated, so there's really, you just can't avoid them. So you have to really address them. As far as on design or space planning, I'm not that familiar with new projects as far as changing the space planning on projects that were already in the works pre-pandemic. But as far as our own office, we have we went on a 2 days on, so we kind of split the staff. So you work for 2 days, take 2 days off, and nobody works on Friday. So it's a Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday setup. So half the office can come in on their 2 days. They don't have to. They can work from home. And then the other 2 days, they're allowed to come in. We encourage you not to come in on your off day unless you absolutely have to. We've provided, we did a floor plan layout, so we try to keep people distance from each other. We have a large cube farm in our office, and we didn't want people right next to each other if we could help it, so we moved people around, modifying the floor plan layout. We changed the capacity of people that are allowed in conference rooms and cafeterias and other meeting areas. So you're only allowed so many people in those rooms to make sure that we maintain social distancing. We require masks in all the public spaces. So if you're in your own private office and you're by yourself, you don't have to wear your mask. But if you come out into the hallway or go into the lobby area, you're required to wear a mask. We have to self-certify every day when you come in. You have to certify that you don't have a fever, you don't have a cough, you don't have shortness of breath, you don't have a sore throat. So those are some self-certification things that we do in our office. We're not allowing visitors right now to come into the office unless absolutely necessary to come in. So this changes in just how you work within the office. So I would imagine that design-wise and developers, that's going to change what space requirements people are going to want to have and how they want to build. I do remember one article I got from Bisnick and Caulfield that addressed just that, where we were always trying to get more people into less space, so for rental reasons. And now now we gotta distance each other a little more. So things are different, and trying to plan for that eventuality of how we want to interact in our offices now, and even to the point of sometimes even having one-way hallways. You got to go north on one and south on the other side of your office. So I haven't seen it yet, but I would imagine that's coming down the pipe. Design.
Yeah, and that touches sort of where we want to go to in terms of living in the pandemic world and what will be changed in the post-pandemic world as well in terms of these requirements. But on to Laurent, in terms of, again, what you're seeing right now in the current time as we reopen, in terms of any changes with ongoing projects that you're noting that are pandemic related. What are you hearing?
So we're not hearing a lot right now from tenants, and I think part of it is that there's just a lot of unknowns and more questions than answers at this point on which way things are going to go. Kind of echoing what Rick was just saying. I mean, how we build is different, and that has an impact in terms of cost, schedule, how things are phased, how inefficiencies are going to play in, and how potentially efficiencies can be realized if there's creative ways to do things differently. But right now on the job site, we're seeing a lot of what Rick just talked about, protocols in terms of self-certifying, the need for PPE. We have designated personnel at this point that's focused on making sure that the COVID-19 plan is in effect, that everybody is on board, that everybody's concerns are addressed. So that's all time and money that needs to play in. Specific to one project that I can think of, I've heard thoughts about whether furniture should be laid out differently. I think that's true for any work environment. Our own office space, for instance, we're looking at at that same floor plan, and how do we space people? How do we stagger work hours or work days? So I think a lot of that is happening now, or at least being considered, and I expect that will be part of the conversation going forward.
On to Katie.
Yeah, so same with us. I mean, as I stated, we've been home for quite some time. We haven't really felt a necessity to kind of rush back into the office. So we've been kind of slowly working on a plan. Certainly we're all available to go to construction sites, and we're seeing a lot of the same things that Lauren and Richard talked about regarding, you know, the need to separate people, separate subs. Things do take a little bit longer. You're not walking around with building inspectors anymore. You're waiting for reports and having to communicate kind of without being face-to-face. Some products are being a little bit delayed. But as far as in the office, we're moving slow, and we're taking a lot of precautions to kind of see what happens as things start to open. As I stated, we're not expected to even think about going back until July 1. We actually sent out a company-wide survey last week that talks about measures that people would be comfortable with in coming back to the office. Certainly my office is in Chelmsford with 10 people is laid out substantially different than our Boston office with 75 people. So there are, you know, quite a few cubicles. There are some individual offices. In Worcester, we're able to spread out a little bit more also. So we're coming up with a company-wide plan that everyone will be comfortable with. Certainly there's also quite a few people in Boston that take the T and that take public transportation. So that's a big consideration too. So what we're looking for right now is to really come up with a plan that benefits everyone in the company. You know, certainly besides that, there's childcare. A lot of camps, we haven't talked about that, but a lot of people are having trouble getting back to work full time. There's no childcare for the summer. So the availability and the ability to be able to, you know, work when you need to work and be there for your family is also a big consideration moving into the summer. And that's pretty much what we've seen. As far as architects and other engineers I've talked to, my multifamily projects have not been changed. They have, sorry, somebody's ringing my doorbell. Like,
I can hear it.
I have the door locked. It's probably UPS. I have, you know, heard that, you know, typically everything that we've had in the process is not changing. People are looking at things like clubhouses and how the clubhouse space was used, maybe not changing it architecturally from the exterior, but looking at what those interior spaces are supposed to be now. Where once they were going to be kind of shared workspaces or fitness centers, they're looking at how spacing can be created there, how maybe to break up the spaces a little bit more. I've heard of architects taking on a lot of interior space planning to have abilities for two people to pass in a hall or between cubicles, spacing people out enough within the spaces to allow for the proper separation. And also talks of potentially future multifamily being created with enough space to have that interior office. You know, maybe less going small and more providing a little bit more space so that people have the ability to work from home in their apartment. So certainly I think it's going to change as we continue to kind of work through this and see new projects come online.
And so this is where we can weigh in, ask you all to weigh in on what you foresee in the future in terms of, you know, future construction projects, whether residential or commercial. On some of the many things that you touched on, you know, Rick talked about, you know, more space, you know, greater space requirements with social distancing, perhaps becoming something that is more desirable. You know, we've lived in a world, certainly on the commercial side recently, in terms of office space, where, you know, you want to bring people together. You want, you know, it's space for innovation and common areas, and you know, the bump factor, a very important thing. Now we're in this pandemic period, and to what extent do we expect to what extent do we expect requirements for commercial or residential facilities to substantially change going forward, in terms of, on one hand, we need more space for distancing. On the other hand, on the commercial side, we might permanently have more people working from home remotely. And so, there's a lot here to discuss in terms of what you foresee, and knowing that nobody has the perfect crystal ball. Who wants to weigh in first in terms of how we see space considerations changing in the pandemic and post-pandemic world? Who wants in first?
Well, I just want to jump on a couple of things. It's going back a little bit. So I can't imagine, with what we've all learned, that you can work from home efficiently and effectively. We figured it out. We started with GoTo meetings and now Zoom meetings, and you can have an effective meeting and you can stay in touch. And someone mentioned happy hours and video chats and different ways to stay connected. So the need to be in the office, I don't think is as great as it once was. It's something that's come out of this pandemic, unintentionally, but it's come out of it. And then one other item, and when you're coming back to your office, it was Katie that mentioned this, doing a survey to your employees and asking them what they're worried about and what they're afraid of and how they would want to see it done. That's real important to do, because you can't get people to come back into the office if they're afraid. That's an important issue to pick out. So I can't see how design for office space or the change in how we use office space can't be different going forward.
All right, want to give that a go? What do you see, and what's your crystal ball look like in terms of how the nature of these projects in the future?
I mean, I think we're learning a lot about ourselves with this, and I think there's value in hanging on to the lessons that we're learning. So, I mean, in terms of how we function as a team, now specific to our projects, we're still very efficient, almost more efficient, because we're spending less time on the road. There's a little bit more flexibility in terms of how people structure their days, and maybe that's bad because some people are connected, late into the night, and maybe that's not a good thing. But I think as an industry, we're pretty resilient and creative, and so there's definitely an opportunity here to learn how to adapt, and I think we're well equipped to do that. And I mean, things have morphed, in the past, and this is unprecedented in terms of this specific event, but we've seen trends and things shift, and so I don't know what the future is necessarily, but I guess I'm not overly concerned, because I think we have the tools, and I think we have an opportunity here to take the positives out of this situation.
What do you think, Katie?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is the first time in my lifetime that something this large has not just affected one group of people. It affects absolutely everyone. And I think, as Laurent said, I think, everybody has been working from home. Everybody has had to kind of merge their work and family lives and be efficient and be, the best person, the best parent, the best husband and wife, and the best that they can be all at the same time. And I definitely think it's going to change all of us for the better. And I think our work environment for the better.
Well, we're at that time, and that was a very fast 30 minutes. We're at that time, though, where we do want to open this up to the questions from attendees, and so I will summon Aaron if there are any questions at the ready at this point. And I will note that I enjoyed seeing my picture in the first slide where I'm in a suit. I don't recall, I don't know where my suits are actually at this point. So it's
Yeah.
So good morning. Oh, so good morning, everyone. This is Erin. You can't see me, but as you'll see at the bottom, there's a raise hand option. So if you click that, I see all the attendees here, and I'll see that you raised your hand. I'll unmute you so you can ask the question. Currently, I'm looking at the list, and I don't see anyone has a question yet. But if you have any problems, just put it in the chat box, and we'll try to get it addressed. But still waiting on some questions here.
Yeah, send in those questions, folks. And I have one right now, and you all touched on this, and it's very hopeful tone. I guess the question I'd have is, what changes in the way you're doing business right now, and interfacing with clients, tenants, customers, in the way that you are? What do you are there positives that will be taken away from working in this period, and processes that will now always be part of how you work in the construction space?
It's the virtual meetings. That's probably what we'll be doing for a long time. And the construction trailers are closed for the most part, at least they are in our job. So only the Erlen staff is allowed in there. So all your foreman's meetings, your project management meetings, even your owner's meetings are all done virtual right now. That's the safety protocol we established.
And do you find efficiencies there in how those meetings go? And in my own experience, having been on about 2 or 3 Zooms prior to all this, and now really spending much of the day on these, I find that there can be incredibly efficiency as you prepare for these types of meetings, and all of those things that are associated with live meetings, as important as they are, suddenly become part of the greater efficiencies. Now you're not in a car, you're not traveling 45 minutes or an hour or battling a commute, and you're getting things done in a very focused, perhaps even a more focused way than in prior times.
Yeah, I think Laurent mentioned that you're not in the car, so there's not an hour to and from. The only thing with the Zoom meetings that it took us a little while to figure out is you're missing some visual cues, and sometimes you end up talking over each other. But as you get going and you get into it, you learn to adapt to that. So it makes it far more efficient.
So it's been brought up, this is Erin, you can't see me, but it's been brought up in the chat, I noticed, from Greg. I'm sorry, Greg, I'm gonna not pronounce your last name correctly, I know that, but he brought up a good point that a vaccine, we're talking about how this is gonna change office space, but with the introduction of a vaccine, does that kind of revert back to what we were used to before? I don't know if anybody wants to kind of touch on that.
And I don't know what my crystal ball says about that one.
That goes back to the crystal ball question, I think, where we don't know. I mean, but we can control, I guess, how that goes, just based on what the conversation is.
And I think your point earlier too, the capacity of the build, design, construction industry to adapt quickly is a great attribute, and we have such dynamic firms in this area that have always been on the cutting edge of innovation in the build space. So that's a characteristic of the build community here in Massachusetts. It's a great asset, and I think I would imagine that you are going to get requests to do a project in a specific way in terms of being responsive to the needs of distancing and so forth. But as with projects in the past, you can, as these requirements change, perhaps with the onset of a vaccine, and suddenly We can do everything that we used to be able to do. It's as easy to change these projects. I don't imagine, and you can all weigh in, that any request for a space requirement in consideration of distancing, for as an example, would be so fundamentally, it would so fundamentally affect a space that it couldn't easily be reverted back to into a different configuration or what have you, to accommodate less distancing.
So,
Sorry, Erin.
no, go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Katie.
No, I was just going to say, though, I don't think bringing a vaccine into it's going to just make this all that people have been, taught to and have been afraid and have learned a different way of life. And I think that those of us, who have this is touched, I don't think it's going to be as easy as, here's your vaccine, go back to your cube 5 feet, 4 feet away from your neighbor. I think that there's quite a few practices that, not to say that this will ever happen again, but there's quite a few practices that I think are going to stay with people throughout, moving forward. I don't think it's all just going to go away with a vaccine and everyone's going to go back to normal. I have a feeling that a lot of these practices, working from home, people who are immune compromised, or people who are older, or people who have young children, are going to think about things differently well into the future.
Mm.
So we have a few questions that are coming in through the Q&A. Great option as well. We have a lot of different options here to ask questions. So this comes from Scott Weiss. What have you found to be the biggest challenge in the office or on the construction site?
So I guess in the office, I think the biggest challenge is for people that work remote, and kind of echoing what Katie just said, that have children or people that they're caring for, finding time to work and manage that can be difficult, or finding time to be in the office if there's no childcare option. I think that I found that to be a challenge for some of our team members. In terms of construction, I think the big challenge had been really just the moving target. Kind of the rules changed a few times in quick succession in terms of which projects are essential and which ones are not. What's the list? What are the requirements? That became difficult in terms of how we instruct our subcontractors, because we need to be clear with what the directive is and which way we're proceeding, and without that information, we weren't necessarily always able to do that as quickly as you would like. Fast forward today, we're 2 weeks into something that's been fairly consistent in terms of directive. It's really minor adjustments now in terms of what type of PPE and the order of how things are put on and removed. We are getting good buy-in from everybody. There's always going to be people that need to be reminded to follow the rules, but as long as there are moving pieces, we just have to be ready to respond. And we have a lot of people that follow our directives, so we just have to be able to be prepared to react quickly.
All right, we have Catherine Perry. I'm gonna ask her to unmute herself. She raised her hand. Catherine, if you unmute, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Thanks. Yeah, this is Catherine Perry. I'm the assistant planner at the town of Bedford. And I wondered if the developers had any comments on interacting with local government during this time. For example, have you been involved in any remotely held public hearings, and how have they gone? Or have you had just little practical issues like delivering large plans to buildings that are closed? Or how happy are you having remote meetings with staff as opposed to face-to-face meetings, say for a project that's just getting started and you want a bit of interaction? Thanks.
Great question.
So our experience so far has been, like I stated, kind of all over the board. And our meetings have gone very well. I've had a few in Norfolk, Massachusetts, one in Tingsboro, some staff meetings with towns and department heads, and they've gone very well. I haven't been to one yet where there's been a significant amount of abutters and commentary yet, but they have gone very well. I still find it a little difficult. I'm not sure that paper plans are absolutely necessary. I've had to come to the office quite a few times or use a printing service to get paper plans delivered places, rather than just doing a PDF or an online submission. I'm hoping that that can slowly start to change. I have to go to Marlboro today with 7 plan sets and drop them outside the back door. But, again, I think that things are constantly changing. So hopefully people will be able to get a little bit further away from the paper aspect of submissions.
As a former planning board member in 2 communities, 9 years in total, to get the stack of plans, and I always felt very sad at the end of the meeting when the approval moved on to that it all went into the trash bin after all of that work. So you might be right. That might be a good development out of this, and that we're less dependent on paper.
So we have another question that's come in through the Q&A, anonymous. Any estimates on how long it will take for retail and hospitality construction to rebound? And if it's likely to take more than 18 to 24 months, is there something you think might be filling the void? Are there concerns about financing and lending in the market right now? I guess that's 2 different questions.
Anyone want to take a shot at that one? So, I will weigh in very quickly. At MassEcon, we had an affinity group meeting with our membership with the banking community involved, and I think the message from the financial community, from the banking community, were that they were in such a better position today than in the last recession. In the Great Recession, the banking industry really was part of the problem. The financial industry was part of the problem in creating that crisis. Today, it's really part of the solution. And so I think what I heard in terms of one thing from the bankers was talk to your bank, and really engage them early and often. They are more able to be creative in this period than really ever before. So that's a quick input from the banks that I spoke with.
I can put a couple of my 2 cents into that as well, because I've interviewed many people from the industry all over the country in the last couple of months. And one of the things that's happening is you're getting a lot of retailers and restaurants that declaring bankruptcy, reorganizing themselves, making it more attractive for some lenders to put them back in place, and they're going to operate a little more efficiently. So it's the bankruptcy policies we have in this country have been helpful in this situation.
Great. So we ready for our next question? This is from Eric Salerno, the town of Tingsboro. Are we in the Middlesex 3 region reasonable to be optimistic about the rumblings we've heard about the potential for accelerating the return wave of workers to suburban markets?
Yeah, Rick, any?
Are we to be worried about the wave of return workers? I don't think so. I mentioned in the beginning that March and April we're all working together to figure out how we were going to do this, and I think most of the contractors that were working during that time, they've figured it out. So the programs are in place to make sure things are safe. We do have someone from Bedford, I think, yes. We do have building departments and Board of Health coming and looking at our jobs occasionally, just making sure that it's safe and protocols are in place. There are neighbors that sometimes when you're in an urban environment that are looking out the window, making sure that people aren't congregating in big packs or not wearing their PPE, or 5 people jumping in a car at the same time. So I don't think we have to worry about it. I think we've learned how to work in this environment, and we had to learn how to work in this environment if we wanted to keep people employed and keep projects coming in. It was a must.
I think that's something that we've seen in the private sector among employers, and that there has been an opportunity to be very well informed about approaches to reopening and considerations and protocols they had to consider. We did a survey of our membership at Mass Econ about 2 weeks ago, just to provide some input to the governor's advisory board. And at that point, we had 85% of our members saying they had a plan in place. And there was certain variation to all of them in terms of different steps that they foresaw. Now, what they lacked was the instruction, the guidance from the state, which now, of course, we're all getting. And so it's going to be different depending on what phase and what type of industry you are, what type of workplace you are. But we're going to see, I think the best thing in all of this is the amount of information that's been available, the thoughtfulness of employers to develop plans on their own, and now to get guidance from the state. And I think that's a trait. Again, our job at Mass Econ is to be a booster for Massachusetts, but I think we're wicked smart here in Massachusetts, and I have seen in my interactions with different employers a great deal of thoughtfulness in terms of their approaches. Some are saying, we're not doing anything till Labor Day, but others saying, we're ready before Labor Day, and we're going to have a introduction of folks to the workplace over time when the time is right. But we're not going to be 100% certainly for a long time in terms of requiring everybody to come into work. Everybody has a different plan, but I think everybody is being smart about this. And so again, whether it's Massachusetts in general or the Middlesex 3 area in particular, I think all of these factors are give us cause for hope that we're gonna get back into the workplace sooner than later, but in the right way.
Did that original question get revised? Did I see that pop up?
Yeah. So just to follow up on that, and Peter, you may be the perfect person to follow up on that too. Is I think the question was more of given that we've had years and years of people heading towards Boston for expansion and redevelopment. Is there's discussion that maybe companies might be coming to the suburbs with more room, more elbow room and such. Is that wishful thinking, or is there some truth to that?
I think it's absolutely going to be part of the planning process for future expansion projects, location projects. That has to be a consideration. And it's been a wonderful thing for Cambridge and Boston. We've had really a terrific period of economic growth in Massachusetts over the past decade. And we saw that especially concentrated, not wholly, but especially concentrated in places like Cambridge and Boston, the seaport and Kendall Square, everybody wanting the bump factor, the innovative juices of being connected and close to other companies like your company and so forth. But we've also seen what could happen, and this could be a once in a lifetime, once in a generation event, and we hope it is. But it has to factor in the consideration of especially larger companies being able to balance interests in such a way that they can accommodate workers both in high density areas, but but probably be more interested in hedging their bets and also being in the suburbs and beyond the suburbs. So I think for the suburban area, for the Middlesex 3 area, well positioned to take advantage of those opportunities going forward. I think it's absolutely going to have to factor in the evaluations of employers as they're looking at space in the future.
So that sounds like a perfect place to end the conversation on a bit of a high note as well too. And so I want to just stop and thank our panel, our moderator. I got a lot of good information just being able to listen and to hear what you're going through, what you're hearing, what you're seeing, and just also to know that we're not just operating in a bubble, I guess, and we're all kind of working together, and it's just good to be able to connect with everyone. I do, Rick, I'm gonna turn it over to you, and I think we know what you're going to be saying, given the slide that's up here.
You're turning it to me or to the other Rick?
No, to you.
You have to be more specific here.
Sorry, Rick Kaplan.
Me, okay. Well, I thank you, Stephanie, and I want to thank the panel as well. I also want to thank Stephanie's crew, Erin and Steph. They did a fantastic job. And I can't ask for better partners when we put these events on. They work well with us, and they do get the job done, and they always turn out well. So thank you, guys. I also would like to thank our sponsors for today. Sponsors are Reamer and Bronstein, the BSC Group, Mogul Architects, National Grid, Erlin Construction, EBI Consulting, and U.S. Pavement Services. We could never do it without all of those sponsors. I thank them, and I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I also would like everyone to join us for our June 3rd. June 3rd discussion is on real estate en masse and in the Q3 and Q4 of 2020, which will be an interesting discussion as well. So again, I want to thank everyone for joining us and hope you...
Wait, Rick, real quick, can I jump in? So we will be joined by the secretary next week. I just want to note that I have the wrong time on this. It's actually going to be at noon next week. So just wanted to let everyone know. So I hope you can join us at 12 next, not 10. But you'll get plenty of emails.
Yeah, so that will be at noon. All right. That's probably even better because I've been used to getting up at 11 o'clock and getting out of my pajamas at 1. So this is going to be good. You know, one of the things that no one really mentioned is, you know, we've had a traffic situation in this state for a number of years. And since this whole pandemic started, we've had zero traffic. I mean, zero. Which has been a blessing and also an issue. But I think that's going to be one of our, backtracking to what the discussion was all about, that's going to be one of the reasons we're going to see a lot more people moving back into the suburbs as well as working from home, or at least part of the week working from home. Yeah. It's definitely a benefit to the environment as well as our traffic situation. And
I think we'll be hearing more about that next week as well too. I personally look forward to the days when we're complaining about traffic again, but I guess it is a it is one of the silver linings as well too. So hopefully we can we'll be talking more about that next week. But again, thank you again to our panelists, our moderator. Thank you for everyone who's jumped on the line, and to our sponsors as well too. And have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.